Acknowledging your limitations and embracing those limitations and recognizing that they do exist is a way that we can expand into a better way of being. And so sometimes we just have to come down to the fact that we have to simplify life a little bit. Welcome to the Embrace and Expand podcast, where we talk about everything from spirituality, self-development, relationships, mindfulness, wellness, and everything that will help you embrace all that you are so you can expand into the best version of yourself. Hello, and welcome back to the Embrace and Expand podcast. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I want to talk about the feelings of overwhelm, the feelings of stress, the feelings of maybe taking on more than we can actually have the capacity for. And that's what I've done with this podcast, especially in this season when I made the decision that I was going to bring the podcast onto YouTube. I did not realize the amount of work that it was going to take to, one, be able to just record the episodes reliably, two, be able to get the videos synced up with the audio in post-production, three, being able to guarantee that the quality of the video recordings were going to actually be usable. Like I ran into issues with Zoom of some of the recordings would be in 720p resolution, and then some of the other recordings would be in the same resolution you could expect from an old VHS tape from back in the 90s. Not really usable for today's standards on what many people expect from YouTube, and especially since many of the channels that are out there have incredibly polished content and looks absolutely beautiful. So I have been feeling incredibly overwhelmed with trying to make all of this happen. I'm a one-man show. I don't have a producer. I don't have somebody editing the podcast for me. I don't have somebody to edit the video for me. I do everything on my own. And this has led me to make the decision that, okay, with being able to still have all of the time that I need for myself, for my family, for my clients that I hold coaching and breathworking sessions with, how can I alleviate some pressure off of myself? How can I alleviate some pressure off of everything that I'm dealing with and not feel all of this stress and overwhelm? I mean, I do this podcast because I really enjoy it. I had a lot of fun in season 1 just recording many of the episodes just by myself. Granted, I did that all through audio. Didn't have any video, didn't have to worry about the quality of the video, didn't have to worry about making sure that everything was synced up and working reliably. It was a lot easier. It took a lot less time to edit all of the episodes. Now it takes about double the amount of time to edit the episodes and dialing in the video, dialing in the audio within post-production and Final Cut. And so I'm now left with the decision, okay, do I just not do YouTube entirely and just take that off of my plate? It's one option. Do I maybe stop posting on a consistent basis of twice a week? That's another option. Well, the more I've thought about it and the more I've tried to look at everything that I have going on and what can I remove off of my plate to make things just be a little easier on myself and be a little less stressful and be a little less overwhelming. And I've made the decision that I'm going to reduce down to just posting once a week. So I'm still going to post to YouTube, still posting the podcast, all of the other places that you can find it, just in the audio version. But I'm not going to be sticking to that twice a week schedule. It's just too much for me. I just don't have the capacity right now to be able to create quality content and still be there for my clients and myself and my family. And this brings up really boundaries and learning your limitations, as has been discussed in several of the episodes with guests answering the signature Embrace and Expand question. And it has come up twice now with a couple of our guests that acknowledging your limitations and embracing those limitations and recognizing that they do exist is a way that we can expand into a better way of being. And so sometimes we just have to come down to the fact that we have to simplify life a little bit. If there's just too much going on and it's causing too much stress and overwhelm and anxiety within our life, we need to take a pause. We need to open everything up and look at our life, look at what's on our plate and see, okay, what's the most important things here? those obviously can't go away. I can't stop eating. I can't stop sleeping. I can't stop spending time with my wife, Rachel. She wouldn't be very happy with that. I can't stop being there for my clients because they're the ones that actually pay my bills. Unfortunately, the podcast isn't making me any money at this point in time. It's just costing me money and time. However, it does recharge my battery when I have fantastic conversations with the guests, when I get messages on Instagram and through various social media like YouTube of people really enjoying the podcast and really enjoying the information that I'm sharing on here. However, I do have to put importance and priority to the areas in my life that are actually helping to fund my life, because unfortunately in this 3D existence, we rely heavily on money. It is what allows us to buy food. It's what allows us to get gas for our cars. It's what allows us to have electricity and internet to be able to do these various different things. It's what allows me to continue upgrading the podcast in the audio equipment that I'm using, the software that I'm using. And just right now, recording this episode on Riverside.fm. That was another investment that I decided to make to have better audio and video quality when I'm doing interviews with the guests. And then that way it can look substantially better on YouTube than it did when I was using Zoom. Unfortunately, Zoom is a little bit more limited with the quality of audio and video that comes from that. Works great for doing webinars, works great for doing coaching, works great for doing breathwork sessions. But unfortunately, when it comes to creating content and creating a quality, polished product, it just doesn't stand up to some of the other options. Now, don't get me wrong. I've ran into some issues with Riverside already, having some syncing audio and video issues. Today, I ran into issues with it just not recognizing my phone. And so I had to go through a bunch of like reset processes and things like that. But here we are recording this episode, looking and sounding great. So it really leads me back to that, trying to acknowledge where I've taken on too much. And I am not the type of person that really tends to back down from what they say they're going to do. I am very much a person of my word and believe that if you say you're going to do something, you should do something. So I've been sitting with all of these feelings of like guilt, and that I told you guys that I'm going to post twice a week. I'm going to be on YouTube. You know, I made these promises, but the reality is if it's starting to affect my health, my mindset, and my overall well-being, then I have to be able to acknowledge that it's time to shift and pivot. And you know what? That's okay. Let this be your permission slip that if life gets too overwhelming, it's okay to go back to the drawing board. It's okay to tell people, you know what? I said I was going to do this, but honestly, right now, I just don't have the capacity for it. But here is what I can do instead. And if they can't accept that, that's fine too. That is on them, not on you. So I apologize to anybody that's going to be disappointed in the fact that they're not going to get 2 episodes every week from the Embrace and Expand podcast anymore. But that's what I need to do in order to maintain creating the podcast entirely. Because another option was to just stop doing the podcast. And that was an option I wasn't willing to accept. I wasn't even willing to think too much more on that. You know, when I sat down and wrote kind of to myself, it's like, okay, what can I do to alleviate some of this pressure off of myself? That was one of the options that came up, and that quickly got scratched off of the list because, like I said earlier, I really enjoy doing this podcast. I really enjoy sharing the information and all of the conversations that I have on this podcast with you guys. You know, this podcast has been an incredibly healing outlet for me to be able to share some of my life experiences that I've never really felt comfortable sharing on Instagram or Facebook, because you know what? There's a lot of people that follow me that have known me for a really long time. And there was a lot of fear wrapped up around judgment and how they were going to portray what I had to say. Now, many of them might listen to this podcast. Many of them might not. But you know what? I don't really give a shit anymore. I am who I am. And if you don't like me, that's fine. I don't expect everybody to like me in the world. because I recently did a podcast with Ryan Sprague, and depending upon if I can get everything edited, you might be seeing this episode before those episodes, or you might be seeing this after those episodes. But we had a really, really great conversation, and he brought up a really good point. There's over 8 billion people on this planet. You know how uncomfortable and overwhelming it would be to have 8 billion people like you, to have 8 billion people follow you and constantly watching what you do? I don't know about you. I don't want that. I don't want that many people. I would like to have a much smaller group of people that follow me that really truly resonate with everything that I have to say and can see a lot of themselves in the things that I share and can also receive a lot of the tips and wisdom that I share on the podcast. Like I said, I'm going to have to pull back a little bit on how often I'm posting onto the podcast because I'm setting a boundary for myself. And that boundary is that when I start to have these feelings of overwhelm and stress and anxiety start to come up, it's a time period where it lets me know that I need to stop. I need to look at everything that I'm doing and see where I can alleviate some of that pressure. Now, sometimes there isn't anything that I can take off of my plate, and really what I need to do is go through a breathwork session or go spend a long time out in nature, which is actually what I did before I recorded this podcast. I went and sat on a log that's out here in the woods in Virginia and just watched the river for a while. Actually, something really cool happened while I was watching the river. I watched a red-shouldered hawk swoop down, snatch a mouse, and then go flying off in the other direction. I've never seen a red-shouldered hawk before in the wild, so it was pretty cool to actually watch that and see just nature operating. Saw white-tailed deer go running through the woods. It's just those times of being able to stop, allow the nervous system to reset itself and recalibrate itself so that you can come back into your life in a more clear way. And you can see an easier way moving forward that you weren't able to see before. And while I was sitting out in nature, that's what gave me kind of the idea of, okay, maybe what I need to do is just back off a little bit and just post once a week, like almost every other podcast out there does. And telling myself that that was okay. And that was a hard pill to swallow because, like I said earlier, I like to think myself as a person of my word, and I don't like to back down off of my word, again, because I don't want to disappoint anybody. But that's the old people pleaser side of myself. And the reality is I can't please everybody. I can't make everybody happy, but I can make myself happy. And when I start not feeling happy, I have to acknowledge and take responsibility that it is up to me to make myself happy again and do what's necessary in order to make that happen. So again, let this be your permission slip. If you're resonating with what I have to say, if you're feeling overwhelmed in your life, if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling like there's just too much that you have to do, let me tell you, you don't have to do it all right now. You don't have to do it all at all if you don't truly want to. If there's things that you have agreed to that you just don't really want to do, it's okay to tell those people that you don't want to do it, even if that person is yourself. It's okay. Again, let this be your permission slip. You don't have to do anything that you do not truly want to do. And excuse my language, but if it's not a full fuck yes, then it's a fuck no. So let that be okay. Move forward in life however you need to. Do whatever you need to that brings you joy, that makes you feel fulfilled. And just doing a podcast once a week is still going to make me fulfilled. It's still going to give me a creative outlet that I can come to each and every week to share the things that I've learned throughout my life and to share the things I'm continuing to learn throughout my life. That's one of the things that I'm having to make time for is I'm in 2 different containers right now. I hired a coach about a month and a half ago, and so I'm in a container with him and a great group of other coaches to learn more and broaden our knowledge. I'm also in a new certification program called the Compassion Key. So I'm learning another modality that I can bring to my clients to help them heal and clear karmic traumas and imprints so that they can better themselves and free some weight that they've been carrying for a really long time. That, maybe breath work and Reiki and other meditations weren't able to actually touch. I'm just adding more tools to my toolbox to continue to be able to be a better and better space holder for the people that I work with. I'm one of those types of people that I'm never going to stop learning throughout the rest of my life. And if it means that I have to compromise on some things in order to make other things happen, I'm okay with doing that. This is a huge learning point for me because I used to not do this in the past. I looked at my schedule a couple of weeks ago and was looking at my schedule from several years back in 2014, back when I was doing home theater installation. And I was looking at my schedule, and every single day of the month had multiple appointments on it. Every single day. On the weekends, I did stuff with friends and family. On the weekdays, I was working constantly. I was working 8 to 12-hour days. It was too much, but I didn't know at that time that I could say no. If somebody called and said they needed help, I was there. Even though that was to the detriment of myself. That led me through numerous times of feeling depressed, numerous times of feeling overwhelmed and anxious, numerous times of feeling like, the world is just coming down on me and the weight is so heavy, I don't know how long I can carry it. And I did that for years. And now I'm not willing to do that anymore. I'm not willing to sacrifice my health and my mental well-being just to make other people happy. I come first, as should you. When it comes to life, we should always come first. Our health, our mental well-being should come before anything else in life. If you are not putting a priority on that, you need to think about it. Because if you have an empty cup and you're trying to fill everybody else's cup, you're just giving them the very little that you have in your cup. But if your cup is full and ideally overflowing, then you can fill other people's cup without sacrificing any of your own energy. And that's what we truly all need to do. That's what we all need to learn how to do in this life in order to feel fulfilled, in order to feel happy in everything that we do. Now, that's not to say that you're going to feel happy every day. I promise you, I still have days where I don't feel the greatest, and I have to pull myself out of those lower vibrational emotions to try and live better, try and live happier. And sometimes it's more difficult than other times. And that's okay. It's all part of the process. We're not meant to exist in a small, narrow realm of just being happy all the time. We're meant to feel sadness. We're meant to feel anger. We're meant to feel joy, elation, and gratitude. We're meant to feel it all. But we are meant to come back to a baseline. And another beautiful thing that Ryan Sprague had to say is if you look at children, they are the epitome of joy. They still feel anger. They still feel sadness. They still feel hurt and pain, but they always come back to joy. They always come back to happiness and laughter and looking at life through the eyes of awe and wonder, using their imagination to create the limitless potentials that life has. I think that's what we all are trying to get back to. And that's one of the reasons why I find it really important to do inner child work, because inner child work allows us to get back to that perspective that we had when we were a child. But in order to do that work, we have to uncover all the stuff that's burying our inner child. We have to uncover all of the stuff that's been placed on us that is weighing us down and keeping us from feeling that state of joy and being present within that state and recognizing that that is our natural way of being. That is how we are supposed to be. That is how life is supposed to be. We're not meant to always be depressed. We're not meant to always be sad or angry or just pissed off at the world because things aren't going the way that we want it to. Things aren't going the way we want it to typically because we're not putting in enough effort to actually create the reality that we want. It's like I was talking about in episode 3 of why the law of attraction might not be working for you. Because if you're not in a vibrational match with what it is that you're trying to call in, it's never going to come. It's just going to come right by you. It's going to come to the person that's actually in a vibrational match for what that thing is. So we have to be mindful of what we're feeling within our body. We have to be mindful of the emotions that are coming up because they all are messages for us. They're all trying to tell us something. If you're dealing with chronic pain, okay, maybe look at what that source is. Are you working too much? Are you being too hard on your body? Are you not giving yourself enough rest and time to relax? Are you not doing enough self-care? Are you not doing the things that bring you joy in your life? And instead, maybe you're just masking that feeling. Are you taking a bunch of Tylenol and Advil just to mask that chronic pain? Pain really is a message from our body that it is feeling too much. It's not able to receive the nourishment that it needs. So let those emotions, let those feelings and sensations that are coming up into your body communicate what it is that you need to listen to. And you truly do need to listen to it. Just like I listened to my feelings of stress, overwhelm, and anxiety. I had to listen and see what was it that they were trying to say. And it was my body and nervous system's way of saying, hey, you're doing too much. It's time to back off a little bit. It's time to put priority on the things that you need to do that you know are going to further your education and further you becoming a better and better version of yourself. And I saw an interesting thing on Instagram yesterday that it was a woman talking about how she doesn't like people saying that we need to become better versions of ourselves. Instead, we need to accept all the parts of ourselves and recognize that that's just who we are and that's just how things are going to be. And I could see that perspective and I can appreciate that perspective. But to me, what becoming a better version of yourself is exactly what she said. Acknowledging all of our feelings, acknowledging all of our limitations, acknowledging both the light and the dark side of ourselves, accepting that for who it is, but also recognizing that we can still do better. We can still learn to be a better listener. We can still learn to be a more educated person. We can still learn to be a better space holder. We can learn to be able to speak better. We can learn to be able to show up better in whatever job or career that you're in. We can strengthen our body more and more and more by continuing to lift weights or go on a run or ride a bike or just take the time to improve your physicality, whatever that may look like for you. These are all things that we can do to get just a little bit better every day. It's not about being a perfect person, because the reality is none of us are ever going to be perfect. It's not a possibility. Something maybe we can strive for, but it's also something that we should recognize that it's never a final destination. And it's not something that we're going to get to a certain point and be like, I've made it. I am finally this perfect person. Because you might eventually realize that you don't actually like who that person is. And now it's back to the drawing board. Now it's back to trying to change different things and do different ways of being in order to actually be somebody that you truly like, that you truly love, that you truly enjoy being, that you truly enjoy showing up that way in the world. I'm not perfect either. That's why I have a tattoo on my wrist that says Perfectius Imperfectus. It's Latin for perfectly imperfect. It's my reminder of a message I received in my Reiki Master training back in 2016. Constantly kept repeating that in meditations. You are perfectly imperfect, just as you are. You are perfectly imperfect, just as you are. Something that I needed to really accept at that time, that as much as I tried to do everything in my life to perfect standards, it's not always possible to achieve perfection. And sometimes 70% is good enough. Sometimes 90% is good enough. And sometimes we have to acknowledge that, you know what, I'm just not that great at this and I need to practice quite a bit more. And practice is what helps us to get a little bit better every single day. So I do believe that we can become the best version of ourselves each and every day, just by making small little decisions that will help us to be more calm, help us to be more centered, and help us to actually be the person we truly want to be. So thanks for listening on this really long rant today and just trying to explain to you guys why you aren't going to be receiving 2 more episodes of the podcast every single week. But I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. I know I say it on every single episode, and I probably sound like a broken record at this time, but I truly, truly do appreciate all of your listens, all of your messages, your likes, your comments. Really means the world to me. It's what keeps me going on this journey with you. It's what keeps me doing Embrace and Expand, both the podcast and my business of being a coach and a breathwork facilitator. Being able to see other people's transformations is one of the greatest gifts that I could ever ask for. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Embrace and Expand podcast, and I'll catch you on the next one.